The day the humans arrived at the Galactic Military Academy, I thought it was some kind of joke. A really bad one. My name is Vokran, and I had been training at the Academy for 3 standard cycles. I was good, really good. Top 15% of my class specialized in tactical warfare, and I had every reason to believe that my species, the Threxians, were among the finest military minds in the known galaxy. We had conquered 12 star systems. We had repelled the Korthian invasion. We were, in a word, unstoppable. And then these humans showed up. They looked ridiculous. Honestly, they did. Short by galactic standards, no natural armor plating, no venomous capabilities, no redundant organ systems. They were squishy. That was the word that kept bouncing around the barracks after their shuttle landed. Squishy. Like you could poke one with your finger claw and it would just deflate. I remember standing in formation that first morning, watching them file into the parade grounds. There were 5 of them in this batch. Marcus Holt was their leader, apparently. Tall for a human, I suppose, with this strange hair on his face that seemed to serve no tactical purpose whatsoever. Next to him was Jessica Vale, who looked even smaller than the rest. Then Tom Rivers, Arya Grant, and someone they called Lopez, but who later insisted we call him Danny. My best friend Taurix elbowed me in the ribs. Well, what passes for ribs in Threxian anatomy?
Look at them, he whispered,
his vocal cords vibrating with barely contained amusement. They are going to die in the first simulation. I give them 20 minutes. Maybe 30 if they hide really well. I nodded. It seemed like a fair assessment. Commander Braun, our head instructor, was a Vicorian, massive species, built like walking tanks, with 4 arms and an exoskeleton that could stop plasma rounds. He looked at the humans the way you might look at a particularly confused insect. "Welcome to the Galactic Military Academy," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "You will be tested. You will be pushed beyond your limits. 60% of you will fail." Question. Marcus Holt raised his hand. "Oh, here we go," I thought. First day and already making a scene. "Yes?" Braun asked, his eye stalks swiveling toward the human. "Where's the cafeteria?" Holt asked. "We haven't eaten in 14 hours. The entire formation went silent. You could have heard a scale drop, then slowly, the laughter started. It began as a ripple and built into a wave. Even some of the instructors were making those choking sounds that indicated amusement in their species. Braun's mandibles clicked together. "The cafeteria," he said slowly, "is for those who survive morning drills. If you are still conscious after the first exercise, I will personally show you where to find nutrition paste." "Nutrition paste," Tom Rivers muttered. "Great. Sounds delicious." More laughter. These humans were comedy gold. Unintentional, sure, but comedy nonetheless. The first exercise was simple. An obstacle course designed for mixed species capabilities. Climbing walls, pressure plates, zero-gravity sections, acid pools, laser grids, standard stuff. We had all done it 100 times. The record was held by a Cladacian named Yura. She had completed it in 8 minutes and 42 seconds. The humans went last. Tradition, I suppose. Let the weakest go last so everyone can watch them fail. Marcus Holt stood at the starting line. And I noticed something odd. He was smiling. Not a nervous smile, not a smile of bravado. Just this calm, almost lazy smile like he knew something we didn't. It should have been my first warning. The buzzer sounded. Holt took off at a pace that was, honestly, embarrassing. Slow, methodical. He approached the first climbing wall, which was 12 meters of slick polymer designed to be scaled using magnetic grip gloves. Standard equipment distributed to everyone. Holt looked at the wall for exactly 3 seconds. Then he reached into his pack, pulled out something that looked like a small projectile launcher, and fired a grappling line straight to the top. The hook caught. He pressed a button. The line retracted, pulling him up the wall in 2 seconds flat. "Wait," Taurix said next to me. "Is that allowed?" I checked my datapad. The rules said reach the top of the wall. They didn't specify how. Holt dropped down on the other side and kept moving. A next obstacle was the pressure plates. Step on the wrong sequence, and you get hit with a neural stunner. Non-lethal, but it hurts like hell and drops most species for at least 30 seconds. The pattern changes every time, so you have to be quick, observant, adaptive, Holt didn't even slow down. He pulled out another device, threw it ahead of him. It landed on the first plate, triggered the stunner, and then exploded in a burst of electromagnetic interference. Every plate in the section went haywire, firing at random, and in the confusion the safety protocols kicked in and shut the whole system down. He walked through like he was strolling through a park. "That has to be cheating," someone behind me said. "Read the rules," someone else replied. "Nowhere does it say you cannot disrupt the obstacles." The zero-gravity section should have been his downfall. Most species have some degree of spatial awareness in null-G environments. Humans, as far as we knew, were planet-bound creatures. They should have been helpless. Holt pulled out a compressed air canister and used it like a thruster, steering himself through the section with casual precision. He even did a flip, a completely unnecessary flip. Show off. By the time he reached the acid pools, the laughter had stopped. We were all watching in silence. The pools were 3 meters wide. You were supposed to use the retractable bridges, but they only extended for 5 seconds at a time, and the control panels were on opposite sides, meaning you needed a partner or incredible speed. Holt looked at the pool, looked at his pack, pulled out a collapsible pole, extended it to full length, planted one end, and vaulted over the entire thing like some kind of primitive athlete. He crossed the finish line in 6 minutes and 18 seconds. A new record. Commander Braun stared at the timer like it had personally insulted his ancestry. "That," he said slowly, "was not standard procedure." "No, sir," Holt agreed, still wearing that infuriating smile. "It was effective procedure." The rest of the humans completed the course using similar methods. Jessica Vale used some kind of adhesive spray to walk up walls. Tom Rivers short-circuited the laser grid with a mirror array. Aria Grant brought a drone that mapped the safe path through the pressure plates. Danny Lopez just ran really fast and seemed to rely on pure luck, which somehow worked. They all finished in under 10 minutes. All of them broke the top 20 records. We went to the barracks that night in a state of confused silence. Talaric sat on his bunk, cleaning his weapon with more aggression than necessary. "They cheated," he insisted. "All of that equipment, those gadgets, we were not issued any of that." "They brought their own gear," I pointed out. "The rules do not forbid it." "The rules were written assuming people would follow the spirit of the challenge." "Maybe," I said quietly. "The humans do not care about the spirit. Maybe they care about results." Talaric threw his cleaning cloth at me. "You are defending them now." "I am stating observations." The next day was combat simulations. Now this, I thought, this would be different. This was not about clever gadgets or rule exploitation. This was about tactics, strategy, split-second decisions. This was where the humans would finally show their true limitations. We were divided into squads, mixed species, of course, to promote cooperation and understanding between cultures. I got assigned to a squad with Talrix, 2 Corthians named Velk and Rixus, and Marcus Holt. Oh, perfect. Just perfect. The simulation was planetary defense. We were the attacking force, tasked with breaching a fortified position held by instructor-controlled drones. Standard assault tactics, overwhelming force, coordinated strikes, establish a beachhead, push forward. Simple. Holt gathered us together before the simulation started. "All right," he said, looking at each of us in turn. "What is our objective?" "Reach the fortress," Velk said immediately. He was a Corthian shock trooper, built like a mobile artillery platform. Subtlety was not in his vocabulary. "Wrong," Holt said simply. Velk's scales bristled. In Corthian body language, that was a prelude to violence. "How is that wrong?" "That is literally the objective." "The objective," Holt said patiently, "is to complete the simulation with the highest score possible. Points are awarded for speed, minimal casualties, and tactical efficiency." Yeah, I checked the briefing. He was right. "Correct," I said. "So breaching the fortress is only one method," Holt continued. "A very expensive, very slow method. We are going to do something else." "Like what?" Rixus asked. "We are going to make them come to us." I blinked. All 3 of my eyes. "That makes no sense. They are defending. Why would they leave their fortified position?" Holt's smile returned. That smile. I was beginning to hate that smile. "Because we are going to give them a reason." The simulation began. Standard doctrine said we should scout the approaches, identify weak points, mass our forces and strike. Instead, Holt had us spread out in a wide perimeter, staying just outside the fortress's weapon range. Then he had Velik fire a single shot at their communications array. Not enough to destroy it, just enough to damage it. Now we wait, Holt said. For what? Talrix demanded. For them to panic. It took 4 minutes. The defending drones, operating under instructor control but following programmed military logic, detected the damaged communications array. Their programming identified it as a critical vulnerability. Standard protocol in that situation is to send out a repair team with armed escort, which is exactly what they did. There, Holt said quietly. Ambush positions. Now. We caught them in the open, completely exposed, wiped out the entire repair team and their escorts without taking a single hit. Then before the fortress could respond, Holt had us target the power relay on the eastern wall, not the main generator. The relay. Why the relay? I asked. Because, Holt explained as he lined up his shot, if we take out the generator, they have backups. But the relay controls the distribution. Take that out, and half their defensive turrets go offline for at least 30 seconds during the switchover. He fired. The relay exploded. Exactly 32 seconds later, we rushed the eastern wall, breached it during the power gap, and secured the fortress from inside. Total time 11 minutes, 14 seconds. 0 casualties. Maximum tactical efficiency rating. We set a new Academy record. Again, Commander Braun reviewed the simulation footage 3 times. 3 times. He kept pausing it at the moment we ambushed the repair team, his mandibles clicking in what I had learned to recognize as deep thought. Holt, he finally said, explain your reasoning. Sir, they were operating under standard defensive protocols, Holt said. Protocols are predictable. If you know the protocol, you can manipulate it. Make them react instead of act. Force them into a position of weakness. And if they had not sent the repair team, then we would have tried something else. Humans have a saying, no plan survives contact with the enemy, so you do not make 1 plan, you make 5 plans, 10 plans. Whatever it takes. Braun was silent for a long moment. Then he said, this type of warfare, does your species have a name for it? Asymmetric combat, Holt said. Fighting smarter, not harder. Using the enemy's strengths against them. We have been doing it for thousands of years. It is kind of our thing. That night in the barracks, nobody was laughing anymore. Talrix sat on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. They think differently, he said quietly. Not better, not worse. Just differently. They do not fight the battle in front of them, I said, working through the logic. They fight the battle they want to have. They change the parameters. That should not work. But it does. The weeks that followed were a systematic dismantling of everything we thought we knew about warfare. Every simulation, every exercise, every tactical scenario. The humans approached it from an angle nobody expected. They used noise as a weapon, creating distractions and false targets. They turned our own communication networks against us by introducing carefully crafted misinformation. They won a starship boarding exercise without firing a single shot, just by convincing the defending team that their air supply was contaminated. That last one was particularly clever and infuriating. We spent 20 minutes in sealed suits, burning through our limited oxygen supplies, searching for a contamination leak that never existed. By the time we figured out it was a bluff, the humans had waltzed onto the bridge and claimed victory. Jessica Vale was especially good at what they called social engineering. She could talk her way past security checkpoints, convince supply officers to hand over restricted equipment, and once memorably persuaded a combat instructor that class had been cancelled. We all got a free afternoon. That earned her a lot of friends. Tom Rivers was their tech specialist. Give him 30 seconds with any computer system and he could make it do things the manufacturers never intended. He hacked a training drone during one exercise and had it start broadcasting old Earth music, something called metal that was just aggressive noise, but it disrupted everyone's concentration long enough for his team to secure the objective. Aria Grant was quiet, methodical, terrifying. She could read people, not minds, nothing psychic, just body language and patterns. She always knew where you were going to be, 5 seconds before you got there. Fighting against her was like fighting against someone who had already watched the recording of the battle. And Danny Lopez was, against all logic and reason, the most dangerous of all. Not because he was the smartest or the most skilled, because he was unpredictable, random. He did things that made no tactical sense, which made him impossible to counter. You cannot defend against someone whose next move is determined by what he had for breakfast. Seriously. He told me that once. I had the green nutrition paste this morning, he said, so I am feeling left flanking maneuvers today. That is not how military strategy works, except when he does it somehow, it works. By the end of the second month, the academy had completely restructured its curriculum. The humans were not just students anymore, they were assistants, consultants. Other students started requesting their presence in study groups. Instructors asked them to help design exercises. Entire battle doctrines were being revised based on human input. And the crazy thing, the thing that kept me awake at night staring at my ceiling and questioning reality, it worked. All of it worked. Species that had been fighting wars the same way for thousands of years were suddenly winning simulations they had always lost before. Tactics that had been considered impossible were becoming standard. We were all getting better, faster, more adaptable, because we were learning to think like humans. Commander Braun called a special assembly in the 6th week. The entire academy, all 4,000 students, crammed into the main auditorium. He stood at the podium, his massive form somehow looking smaller than usual. When the humans first arrived, he began, his voice carrying across the silent hall, many of you laughed. Many of you considered them weak, inferior. I know this because I thought the same thing. Uncomfortable shuffling rippled through the crowd. I was wrong, Braun continued. We were all wrong. Not about their physical capabilities. They are, by galactic standards, fragile. But warfare is not only about physical strength. It is about adaptation, innovation, the willingness to look at a problem and ask not how do we overpower it, but how do we solve it. He paused, letting that sink in. Humanity is a young species. They have been spacefaring for less than a century. They have no grand military traditions spanning millennia. Do you know what they have instead? Silence. They have thousands of years of fighting themselves, of warfare between their own nations, their own tribes, their own cities. They have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Humans became innovative because they had to, because they were fighting enemies just as clever, just as desperate, just as human as themselves. They could not rely on superior strength or natural weapons or technological advantage. So they learned to improvise, to adapt, to think. I saw several instructors nodding, even Yura, the Calabeshian record holder who had been furious about losing her obstacle course title, was listening intently. Starting next cycle, Braun announced, human tactical theory will be a required course for all combat specializations. The humans have agreed to teach it. I suggest you all attend, and I suggest you all pay very close attention. He dismissed us, and the hall erupted into conversation. Excited, nervous, curious conversation. Talrix found me in the crowd. This is unprecedented, he said, a species barely out of their home system, teaching at the academy. Teaching us? They earned it. I said simply. I know. That is what concerns me. Why? He looked at me with all 4 of his eyes, his expression serious. Because if humans can do this in warfare, in tactics, in strategy, what else can they do? What happens when they turn that innovative thinking to science, to engineering, to diplomacy? I had not considered that. I thought about it now. Humans, with their strange, lateral thinking, their refusal to accept limitations, their absolute determination to find solutions instead of accepting problems. I think, I said slowly, the galaxy is going to be a very different place in 100 years. Talrix nodded grimly. I think you are right. That night I stayed up late, reading through human military history on the Academy network, and the more I read, the more I understood. These were not warriors in the traditional sense. These were survivors, problem solvers, a species that had faced every kind of disaster, conflict and challenge their planet could throw at them, and instead of being destroyed, they had learned, adapted, overcome. There was this one historical battle I found particularly fascinating, a place called Thermopylae, where 300 soldiers held off an army of thousands, not through superior weapons or armor, but through terrain advantage, tactical positioning, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. That was very human, refusing to accept the logical outcome. finding a way when no way existed. I fell asleep reading about something called the Trojan horse, and I dreamed of massive wooden structures and soldiers hiding in the bellies of gifts. When I woke up, I realized something important, something that changed my entire perspective. We had not been teaching the humans how to fight. They had been teaching us all along. Every simulation they won, every record they broke, every impossible scenario they solved, they were showing us a different way. Not the right way, not the only way, just a different way. And different, I was learning, could be very, very powerful. Human Tactics Month 1 started the following week. The classroom was packed. Standing room only. Marcus Holt stood at the front, looking amused by the turnout. "All right," he said, activating the display screen. "Lesson 1. Forget everything you know about fair fights. Fair fights are for sports. War is about winning. And to win, you need to accept one simple truth." He paused for dramatic effect. Humans love their dramatic effects. "The rules," he said with that smile, that infuriating, knowing smile, "are just suggestions." And that, I realized with a mixture of excitement and terror, was when everything truly began to change. Human Tactics 101 became the most popular elective in Academy history within 2 weeks. Within a month, it was not an elective anymore. It was mandatory. And I mean mandatory in the way that breathing is mandatory. Skip it, and your entire military career was basically over before it started. I sat in that classroom 3 times a week, taking notes like my life depended on it. Because honestly, it probably did. Marcus Holt was a natural teacher. He made complicated concepts sound simple. He used examples from human history that were so bizarre, so outlandish, that they had to be true. Nobody could make this stuff up. Like the time he told us about a human military operation called D-Day. An amphibious invasion involving thousands of ships, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, all hitting a heavily fortified coastline. The defenders had every advantage: high ground, prepared positions, artillery, the works. "So how did we win?" Holt asked the class. "Overwhelming numbers," someone suggested. "Partially," Holt agreed. "But numbers alone get people killed. We won because of deception. Months before the actual invasion, we created an entire fake army, complete with inflatable tanks, dummy aircraft, fake radio traffic. We convinced the enemy that we were going to invade somewhere completely different. They moved their forces to defend the wrong beach. When we hit the real target, they were out of position." Talrix raised one of his manipulator appendages. "You built fake equipment, fake armies? Just to lie?" "Absolutely," Holt said cheerfully. "War is about information. Control what the enemy knows, and you control what the enemy does. It is cheaper to build a rubber tank than a real one, and if it makes the enemy waste resources defending the wrong position, it is worth every credit." Jessica Vale took over the next section. She specialized in what humans called psychological warfare. Mind games on a massive scale. "The brain," she said, tapping her head, "is your most powerful weapon, and also your greatest vulnerability, because brains look for patterns. They make assumptions. They take shortcuts. And every single one of those shortcuts can be exploited." She pulled up a simulation, a standard hostage rescue scenario. Armed combatants holding civilians in a fortified structure, clock ticking. "Lives at stake. Standard approach?" she asked. "Negotiation followed by tactical breach if negotiations fail," I answered. "It was textbook." "Boring," Vale said. "Also slow. Also gives the hostage takers time to prepare, reinforce, or worse, start executing hostages." "Human approach?" "We skip all that." She showed us footage from an actual Earth rescue operation. The assault team did not breach. They did not negotiate. Instead, they started renovations on the building next door. Loud construction noises, jackhammers, power saws. At 3 in the morning, the hostage takers, already stressed and paranoid, became increasingly agitated.
"Sleep deprived, jumpy."
After 16 hours of constant noise, they were making mistakes, getting sloppy. When the actual assault came, it was over in 90 seconds because the targets were too exhausted to mount effective resistance. "You tortured them with noise," Bilk said slowly. "That is horrible." "That is effective," Vale corrected. "Nobody got shot. The hostages went home. The bad guys went to prison. Mission accomplished." Would you prefer the version where we storm in shooting and hope nobody dies? Felk had no answer for that. Tom Rivers taught us about technology exploitation. Not just hacking, though there was plenty of that. He showed us how every piece of technology had weaknesses, backdoors, unintended uses, ways to make it do things it was never designed for. Your standard issue combat armor, Rivers said, pointing at my gear, has environmental sensors, temperature, radiation, atmospheric composition. Yes? Yes, I confirmed. Standard safety features. Also standard attack vectors, Rivers said. He pulled out a small device, no bigger than his thumb. This emits a false radiation signature. Your armor sensors pick it up, register lethal levels, and automatically seal your suit and activate internal oxygen. Now you have maybe 2 hours of air, limited mobility, and you are panicking because you think you are in a radiation zone. He pressed the button. Every suit in the classroom went into emergency lockdown mode. Cadets started shouting, alarm systems started blaring, and Rivers just stood there smiling while chaos erupted around him. He pressed the button again. Everything deactivated. Meanwhile, he said calmly over the dying alarms, while you are all sealed up and freaking out, I walk right past you and complete my objective. Technology is great, but it is only as smart as the people using it. And people make assumptions. Commander Braun attended that particular lecture. He did not look happy about the demonstration, but he did not stop it either. That said something. Aurea Grant taught pattern recognition and prediction. How to read people, read situations, read battles before they happened. Everything communicates, she explained. Body language, equipment placement, communication frequency, supply movements. If you pay attention, really pay attention, people tell you exactly what they are going to do before they do it. She pulled up a recording of a recent simulation, one I had participated in, actually. Our team versus a Corthian assault squad. We had lost badly. I remembered being confused about how they always seemed to know where we were going to be. Grant played it back in slow motion. Watch Volkern here, she said, pointing at me on screen. He is the squad leader. Every time he makes a decision, he glances in the direction he has chosen. Just for a fraction of a second. But it is there. Subconscious communication. His team follows his eye line. The Corthians, who were being coached by one of us, spotted the pattern. They knew where you were going. 10 seconds before you got there. I felt my scales heat with embarrassment. I did not realize I was doing that. Nobody does, Grant said kindly. That is the point. Everyone has tells. Everyone has patterns. Learn to read them, and you have a massive advantage. Learn to control your own, and you become very hard to predict. And Danny Lopez. Danny taught what he called creative chaos theory, which was really just a fancy term for doing random, unpredictable stuff and seeing what worked. Humans have a saying, Danny announced to the class. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. But sometimes you know what? Sometimes you throw the lemons at people, or you juggle them, or you set them on fire and see what happens. The point is, do not do what people expect, because the moment you are predictable, you are vulnerable. He demonstrated by running a live fire exercise where he changed his plan every 30 seconds. Not because the situation changed, just because his team won by sheer confusion. The opposing force literally could not establish any kind of defensive pattern because there was no pattern to establish. It should not have worked. By every logical military principle, it should have been a disaster. But Danny pulled it off through pure audacity and luck. Lots of luck. This is not a sustainable strategy. Ron pointed out during the after-action review. Sure it is. Danny argued. I have been doing it my whole life. Still alive. Therefore sustainable. You could not argue with that logic. Well, you could, but you would not win. 3 months into human instruction, everything changed. Not just at the Academy. Throughout the entire Galactic Defense Network, battle strategies that had been standard for centuries were being revised. Young officers were questioning their superiors, suggesting alternatives, thinking outside the box. That phrase, thinking outside the box, became incredibly popular. Humans had a lot of good phrases, but not everyone was happy about it. Admiral Corvin, a highly decorated Threxian commander with 40 years of service, visited the Academy for an inspection. He was old guard, traditional. He believed in honor, direct confrontation, and fighting wars the way they had always been fought. He sat in on one of our classes, specifically a session where Marcus Holt was explaining guerrilla warfare, how a smaller, weaker force could defeat a larger, stronger one through attrition, harassment, and refusing to fight on the enemy's terms. Corvin listened for exactly 10 minutes before standing up. "This is cowardice," he announced, his voice echoing through the classroom. "Hiding, ambushing, refusing honorable combat. This is not warfare. This is thuggery." The room went dead silent. Holt, to his credit, did not look upset. He just looked interested. "Admiral," he said respectfully, "with respect, war is not about honor. It is about winning and protecting your people. If I can achieve that without losing soldiers, without wasting resources, why would I not? Because some things are worth dying for." Corvin snapped. "Courage, valor, the warrior's code. These things matter." "They do," Holt agreed, "but they matter less than going home alive." "Admiral, how many soldiers have you lost in combat over your career?" Corvin paused. "Too many," he said quietly. "And how many of those deaths were necessary?" Holt pressed. "How many could have been prevented with better tactics? Smarter planning, a willingness to fight the battle you could win instead of the battle your honor demanded." The Admiral's scales darkened. Among Threxians, that meant anger. Deep anger. "You question my command decisions. I question whether dying gloriously is better than living strategically," Holt said. "I question whether pride is worth more than lives. I question whether we are training these cadets to be good warriors or good survivors. Because in my species we figured out a long time ago that dead warriors do not protect anyone." I thought Corvin was going to strike him. The Admiral's hand went to his sidearm. The entire class tensed. But Holt did not move, did not flinch, just stood there, meeting the Admiral's gaze calmly. Finally, Corvin spoke. "You humans fight without honor. We fight without dying unnecessarily," Holt corrected. "If you want to call that dishonorable, fine. But our survival rate speaks for itself. We are a young species in a dangerous galaxy, and we are still here. That counts for something." The Admiral left without another word, but I noticed he did not shut down the program, did not file any complaints, just left, and that somehow felt significant. Later, Talrix and I discussed it in the barracks. "Corvin has a point," Talrix said. "There is something to be said for honor, for fighting with dignity." "There is also something to be said for winning," I countered, "and going home to your family. What good is honor if you are dead? Our ancestors would be ashamed of this attitude." "Our ancestors," I pointed out, "lost a lot of wars. Maybe it is time we learned from that." The real test came in the 5th month, the Academy's final exercise. The Gauntlet. It was called that because it was designed to break you. A week-long simulation involving everything we had learned. Space combat, ground assault, logistics, intelligence gathering, psychological pressure, everything. Historically, about 30% of teams completed it successfully. The rest either failed objectives, exceeded casualty limits, or simply gave up from exhaustion. This year they made it harder, because of course they did. The humans had raised the bar, so they had to raise the I was assigned to a mixed team, myself, Talrix, Jessica Vale, a Clabasian pilot named Sorine, and 2 Vicorian heavy weapons specialists called Krex and Drona. A good team, balanced skill sets. We had a solid chance. The scenario was brutal. We were deep behind enemy lines. Our mission: disable a strategic weapons platform, rescue captured Allied personnel, and extract before enemy reinforcements arrived. Oh, and we had limited supplies, no backup. And the enemy knew we were coming. Standard military doctrine said it was impossible. The numbers did not work. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and operating in hostile territory with zero support. Vale looked at the briefing and grinned. That terrifying human grin that meant she had an idea. "Okay," she said. "New rule. We are not following the briefing." "What do you mean, not following it?" Soren asked. He was a by-the-book kind of pilot. Rules gave him comfort. "I mean, the briefing is designed to make us approach this like a standard military operation, which means they know exactly how we will react. So we do something else." "Like what?" I asked. "We make them think we are multiple teams. We split up, leave traces of activity in 5 different locations, make them spread their forces looking for us. Then, while they are chasing ghosts, we hit the actual objectives with minimal resistance. Talarex processed that. That could work, but it requires perfect timing and coordination. Good thing we have been training for 5 months, Vale said. We planned for 6 hours straight. Every contingency, every backup plan, every possible point of failure. By the time we entered the simulation, we had 17 different approaches ready, depending on how things developed. The first phase went perfectly. We split into 3 pairs, moving through different sectors. Each pair left evidence. Equipment caches, spent ammunition, false communication signals. The enemy monitoring systems picked it all up, and their forces divided to investigate. By hour 12, they were chasing 3 separate phantom teams, while the real team, having regrouped, moved on the weapons platform unopposed. The platform itself was heavily defended, but here is where human thinking really shined. Krex and Drona, our Vakorian specialists, wanted to blow the main doors and fight through. Traditional approach. Loud, violent, effective, if you had overwhelming force. We did not have overwhelming force, we had cleverness, and Jessica Vale. She walked up to the main gate, alone, unarmed, broadcasting a distress signal, claimed to be a refugee fleeing combat. The guards, following their programming, detained her for questioning while simultaneously alerting their command about a potential intelligence opportunity. What they did not know was that Vale had a micro-transmitter hidden in her boot. While they questioned her, she was mapping their entire security network, identifying patrol patterns, finding the gaps. 20 minutes later, while they were still trying to figure out who she was, we waltzed in through a maintenance entrance that had been left unguarded because all their personnel were focused on the front gate. Val had disabled her restraints using a technique Tom Rivers had taught her, something about exploiting the magnetic locks with static electricity, and met us inside. We planted charges on the weapons platform's power core, not to destroy it immediately. That would be too obvious. Instead, we set a delayed detonation, giving us time to reach the prisoner holding area. The prisoners were another problem. 15 simulated Allied personnel, all awaiting rescue. Moving that many people silently was impossible, so we did not even try. Instead, we triggered a fire alarm. Not a real fire, just the alarm. Standard safety protocols demanded immediate evacuation. The guards had to escort prisoners out of the building. We joined the evacuation, mixed in with the crowd, and once outside, we simply walked away in the confusion. By the time the enemy realized what had happened, we were 3 kilometers away. The weapons platform was exploding behind us, and the extraction shuttle was inbound. Total mission time, 18 hours, 0 casualties. All objectives completed. Bonus points for style, apparently. The evaluators actually gave us bonus points for style. When we finished, Commander Braun reviewed the simulation recordings with his entire senior staff. They watched in silence. When it ended, he looked at Vale. "You pretended to be a prisoner," he said flatly. "Yes, sir," she confirmed. "That was extraordinarily dangerous. If they had scanned you properly, found the transmitter, you would have been compromised." "Yes, sir." "But they did not, because they assumed a refugee would not be a threat. People make assumptions. We exploit assumptions. That is what you have been teaching us, right?" Ron's mandibles clicked rapidly, laughter and Vicorian expression. "Yes," he agreed. "That is exactly what we have been teaching you, and apparently you learned well. Our team scored the highest in Gauntlet history, by a significant margin. 3 other teams, all incorporating human tactics, also completed it successfully. That was a record. Usually 1 or 2 teams made it. This year, 4 did. The Academy Board met for 3 days after that. Closed-door meetings. Lots of arguing. Finally, they announced their decision. Human tactical doctrine was being adopted galaxy-wide, not replacing traditional methods, supplementing them. Every military academy, every training facility, every strategic command center would receive human advisors. The humans were being integrated into the galactic defense network at every level. Some species were thrilled, others were terrified. A few threatened to withdraw from the GDN entirely rather than accept human methods. Those threats did not last long, because 2 weeks after the announcement, the Zelkron swarm attacked the border colonies. The Zelkron were bad news. Insectoid hive mind species, millions of individual units controlled by a central intelligence. They overwhelmed enemies through sheer numbers and complete disregard for individual survival. Fighting them was like fighting a tidal wave made of teeth and chitin. Standard protocol against Zelkron was fortress defense. Dig in, establish strong points, weather the storm, hope reinforcements arrive before you were overrun. It worked maybe 40% of the time. The rest resulted in complete colony loss. The humans said no. They looked at the Zelkron tactics, studied their patterns, and came up with something completely insane. Instead of defending, they attacked. Not the Zelkron forces. The Zelkron command nodes, the hive mind controllers. Turned out, without central coordination, the individual Zelkron units were pretty stupid. They just swarmed toward the last command they received and kept going until they hit something or ran out of energy. Human strike teams using stealth technology and guerrilla tactics infiltrated behind Zelkron lines and started systematically taking out command nodes. The Zelkron, never having faced this kind of attack before, had no defense against it. They were optimized for frontal assault, not protecting their rear areas. Within 3 days, the Zelkron offensive collapsed, not defeated through attrition or superior firepower, defeated through decapitation strikes and exploiting a weakness nobody had thought to target before. The galactic military establishment lost its collective mind. This should not have worked. The Zelkron had been a threat for decades. Multiple species had fought them. Nobody had achieved anything close to this level of success. And the humans did it in 3 days. 3 days. Admiral Corvan, the traditionalist who had criticized human methods, personally led one of the strike teams. He did not talk about honor after that. He talked about efficiency, about saving lives, about doing what worked instead of what felt right. Graduation came at the end of the year. Our class was different from every previous academy class. We thought differently, fought differently, approached problems differently. We were the first generation of galactic defense forces trained in human methods from the beginning. Commander Braun gave the commencement address. "You are now officers," he told us. "You will lead troops, make life and death decisions, face enemies and impossible odds. Remember what you learned here. Question assumptions. Adapt, improvise. Think 3 steps ahead and 5 steps outside the box. And most importantly, understand that your job is not to fight bravely, your job is to win intelligently." He paused. Humanity taught us something valuable. They taught us that there is no such thing as an unbeatable enemy. Only enemies we have not yet figured out how to beat. Take that lesson forward. Make your ancestors proud by coming home alive. The humans received commissions too. Marcus Holt became a tactical instructor at the primary military college on Threxia Prime. Jessica Vale joined intelligence services. Tom Rivers went into military technology development. Arya Grant became an analyst. Danny Lopez somehow ended up in special operations, which was either perfect or terrifying depending on your perspective. Tolerix and I both received assignments to forward scout units. High-risk, high-reward positions. We requested to work together. Command approved it. On our last night at the academy, we all gathered at the observation deck. Humans, Threxians, Vicurians, Cladicians, Kothians, all the species that had been suspicious of each other, that had competed and laughed and doubted. Holt raised a drink. Some kind of human beverage called beer. It tasted terrible. "To thinking different," he said. "To staying alive," Vale added. "To breaking all the rules," Rivers contributed. "To making stuff up as we go," Danny said cheerfully. Talrix looked at me. "They are insane," he said quietly. "Yes," I agreed. "But they are effective. And honestly, I would rather be insane and alive than honorable and dead." He clinked his drink container against mine. "The ancestors would disapprove. The ancestors are not here. We are. And we have work to do." 5 years later, I am a captain now, leading a mixed species reconnaissance unit deep in uncharted space. We have faced pirates, hostile aliens, rogue AIs, and one memorable incident involving a sentient asteroid field. We have never lost a team member. Not one. Know why? Because when we encounter problems, we do not ask how we fight through them, we ask how we think around them. How we turn disadvantages into advantages. How we make the impossible possible. Because that is what humans taught us. That is what they gave the galaxy. Not better weapons. Not stronger ships. They gave us a different way of seeing, a different way of thinking. They showed us that the universe is not a series of obstacles to overcome through force, it is a series of puzzles to solve through creativity. And you know what the funny part is? The really hilarious part? We used to laugh at them, used to think they were weak, fragile, unsuited for the harsh realities of galactic warfare. We could not have been more wrong. Humans are not weak. They are the most terrifyingly adaptive species in the galaxy, because they do not just survive challenges, they learn from them, grow from them, turn them into advantages. That ability, that mindset, that refusal to accept limitations, that is strength, real strength, the kind that wins wars and builds civilizations and changes galaxies, the kind that took a bunch of laughing cadets and turned them into the most effective military force the Galactic Defense Network has ever seen. So now, when new species join the GDN, when they see humans for the first time and start to laugh at their lack of natural weapons, their fragile bodies, their strange customs, we tell them the same thing Commander Braun told us. Do not laugh. Learn, because those soft, squishy, weird little creatures, they will teach you things about warfare, about strategy, about survival that your species never imagined. And by the time they are done, you will be grateful they are on your side. Because the humans are not just soldiers, they are problem solvers. And in a dangerous galaxy full of threats and challenges and impossible situations, that makes them the most valuable allies you could ever ask for. I still have that first obstacle course recording, the one where Marcus Holt broke the record on his first attempt using a grappling hook and casual disregard for conventional methods. I show it to every new recruit who joins my unit, and I tell them the same thing every time. This is what thinking different looks like. Watch it, learn it, live it, because this is how we survive. This is how we win. This is the human way. And then I smile. That same knowing smile Holt used to wear, the one that says I know something you do not. Because I do know something. Something important. The galaxy laughed at human tactics. Now the galaxy teaches them. And that is the most human victory of all. Winning not through conquest, but through conversion, making everyone else want to think like you, turning mockery into methodology, skepticism into standard procedure, laughter into lessons. The aliens laughed at human tactics. Now they teach them. The galaxy is better for it. We all are.